This video is another in a series of survey upgrade features for release 2013 and 14 for AutoCAD Civil 3D. In this video, we're going to focus on figures. Key issues we're going to cover is how survey data previews have changed. This is affected by query, etc. We'll talk about improved survey editing and stability, some of the ribbon tools for survey data, and how the edit horizontal and edit vertical tabs can give you valuable feedback to help you find problems. The auto zoom settings that have actually changed in 2014, so you can turn off the auto zoom if you want. And as always, the reminder that whenever you insert figures into any Civil 3D drawing, it's always going to create parcel segments, and when you remove those parcel segments, it will leave extra parcel segments in your drawing. So when you publish your figures in a drawing or to a surface, make sure you do it in a clean drawing. Create a drawing and then close that drawing without a save to keep track of that stuff on a regular basis. That actually is a fairly good technique to employ while you go through the QA process for a surface. In Windows Explorer, just to review, we're going to be doing this section on a project, and inside that project there are simply model folders, reference folders, and a data shortcuts folder that is project-based, and we have a couple of survey databases we'll be employing, only one of them here, while we go through these examples and cover figure upgrade edit issues. Over in AutoCAD Civil 3D, we simply created a drawing in our project. We're calling it surface build because primarily one of our big issues will be creating the surface and getting the figures right for all of that. This drawing was created from a typical survey template, was put in the project's coordinate system. Over in Survey, we've already got it hooked up. The working folder is set to the same location as our data shortcuts. Our working folder is set. We've already loaded our user settings to make sure that things are set up right for the data that is incoming. Let's first just open the survey database for editing. We've talked in another video, we talk about survey queries and how useful they are. That has added a new way to preview things inside Civil 3D Survey. We've always had the ability to do things. For example, we have a set of resolved figures here, and we could pick one of those, and if we double click on any figure, Civil 3D will auto zoom us to that figure. Once again, that's a setting, and if you turn it off, you won't zoom. So be aware that it's now possible to turn those on and off. So we've always had this intrinsic ability built into Survey since the release 11 to actually see on the screen a fake image or a drawn image of any figure. This is not true for survey points particularly. We also have the ability to employ effectively an object viewer. This is actually a palette that embraces an object viewer that's tuned to Civil 3D type things. We have a set of settings up here that we can change. So since we have a network, we can go to the setup collection. If we pick on the setup collection, according to our settings, we'll be able to see in this viewer what's going on in any setup that could be useful. In here, because it's the object viewer, zoom behaves fairly well. It's like just like the object viewer. It is the object viewer. If you look at the menu, you'll see it's pretty much the same menu that we see over in the object viewer. And since this is all 3D information, it actually has elevation. Although this survey happens to be extremely flat, one of the preview conditions is you can exaggerate all this, and let's just do that. Show you. These are saved in your user settings, so for a network or for a setup, you can do all this, and there is an exaggeration. So for example, if I want to exaggerate everything by a factor of 10 and pick up on a setup, zoom to it, and we can see as we rotate around that we can exaggerate. That exaggerates the information at a scale factor at any setup. You can also preview control points, can preview figures and turn them on and off, rotate around wherever you want to go. Typical object viewer, and once again the figures are exaggerated as well, so that can help you identify problems in your figures with the preview mode, which is very easy to overlook. So here we have an issue with the figure, and let's look at it. So we have a bust in our figure here, so one of our shots in this figure looks like it drops down to almost 0. Once again, the preview modes survey supplies allow you to see this without having to bring the objects into the drawing or look at them. So we'll rotate back up to top. This is completely invisible in plan. And it's a great way to also learn the view cube. Turn off that preview editor. In 13, we got survey queries, and survey queries have their own version of preview. So you have to open the query for edit, go to the query builder, preview it in your drawing, and then you can simply dismiss whatever you queried with that icon that appears. We therefore have 3 distinct ways to preview survey data inside Survey now, so that makes things a little bit confusing. All of them are useful for what they're useful for. It's a good idea to experiment around and learn them. Or in another video, we discussed how to build the queries, etc. in some detail. Where the other issue that we almost always want to have is a way to compare the raw data surface, the raw data in a surface, from our current changed condition. So previously created a surface and shared it out. It's now a data shortcut, so we can create a reference in our current drawing, and it's literally the raw data that came in from the field book, and we're going to express it as a typical border triangles and points for right now. Again, this is a data reference. All the data was put into a surface model from a direct download, made a simple border, so it's point data, figure data as it came in from the gun. No edits of any meaningful nature were actually made. We simply built the surface, wrapped a border around it. We'll cover the surface construction, which is pretty quick, in another drawing. And again, in the object viewer, we'll employ X-ray here and rotate around, zoom in, and again, this is the object viewer. So we can see we have busts at center lines, other issues which are easy enough to resolve and find by employing the reference surface. This helps us keep track of where we might have issues in our surface. We can see we probably have some bogus figures running across our surface, generated from figures that need to be removed, all that sort of stuff. And again, this is the object viewer, so if I pay attention to the cube, I can play around, get around fairly easily. Instead of watching the picture, if you watch the cube, I can play with the tilt, the camera angle, etc., and get a perspective that makes things fairly clear. We obviously have lots of methods lots of visual styles that we can employ here. Some take longer to load than others, all of which can help you visualize what's going on. Shades of gray is one of the cheapest ones, as is X-ray. Take less compute power, just so you know. So as usual, any surface in AutoCAD Civil 3D, we can turn it off simply by making it invisible. We can good habit, select from the tool space, go to the properties box, quick properties box, and make it invisible. If it does become invisible right away, usually a regen all will get your drawing to rectify, which does seem to happen depending on your video card. Obviously, if you're uncomfortable with the surface being completely invisible, and by the way, in the object viewer in 3D, does that mean it's invisible? Absolutely. So if you're uncomfortable with the surface being invisible, you can employ another style. If it is invisible, you need to select it from the tool space. It was a good idea to use that process anyway. We can employ some rough contours here. So the contours will also help you and maybe provide a framework for you to do your figure editing. Sometimes they get in your way, sometimes they don't, but they certainly help you identify where you might have issues and problems. Again, if you prefer, you can of course employ a grayed out style. The existing grayed out style, you can see where we got lots of contours. Those will help you find issues with break lines as well. So taking the raw data, making a quick surface, which we'll cover in detail, as I said, and another exercise, is very useful when we start to edit the figures themselves. So back in Survey, there are a couple of things about building the figures themselves. Typically, you're going to create the point data, get the point data sorted out, maybe make some changes in your data file here, which as we can see is an FBK file, but at some point you're going to go to that FBK file and process line work and generate some figures. You're going to find things wrong with the points, you're going to fix those, and once those are fixed, you want to be careful not to come back to this process line work, since that will run it from the input data, but go down to your survey points, which are resolved and corrected as mine have been in this drawing, and process the line work from here. Make sure you pick the correct figure prefix and line work code set, and if you make point edits in the figures, change the description, change values in them, etc., that do affect the figures, you do have to remember, and Civil 3D will often prompt you for reprocessing the line work, and that's the process line work not the one at the top. So make sure you pick the right process line work command. We will have some issues going back to survey queries. We'll just made a couple of survey queries here. Take a look and see what this one does. We're just pulling the lips on both sides of the road. This is a nice way to divide up and change what you're going to do. It's also going to not only bring in the points that are in the figures, but also bring in the figures themselves so that we can edit and make changes and fix those. So let's insert those lips, and I happen to use the nomenclature of P and F. That gets me both the points and the figures, and we'll see, oh, okay, we got some errors to fix in terms of the lip. Generally, instead of fixing everything right away, you want to take a peruse over the whole data set, kind of observe locations where you do have problems, and look carefully. Here, for example, we have a bunch of data that's producing a problem, so it's usually a pretty good idea to try to find what setup that was done from, and well, this is easy enough to do by grabbing one of the points. This will bring up the survey point toolbar or the survey green toolbar, and you can always browse to the survey data. That's going to get you to effectively the setup, and by looking at the setup itself, I've docked. We find that setup, and I'm going to expand my window a little bit. Now that you found that setup, and it'll find the point that you're on, and we can look carefully at other things in this setup and look down. So we had one prism change here in this setup, and let's look through it another way. So as we can see, we have a prism change, and you can select one of the points and it will change where those points are. You can see we have a blown set of prism changes all at this location for a number of points. We need to rectify those, so this is actually editing the point data. As with all things in Civil 3D, you can cut down the number of columns that you want to display, okay, to whatever selection you want. So we don't want lat long, we don't want northing and easting, don't want the scale type, don't want the distance type, don't want the vertical type, do want the target type. And the less data you show, the easier it is for you to make sense of what's going on and focus in on what you're actually trying to change. Here we're computing an elevation based on an incorrect prism, so we can actually wide that, find all those shots. Can we change them all at once? So if I select one row, pan down to this one, select this one, and we'll make them all 5.29. Cannot do it. So might be worthwhile to, in this case, go back to the file. We can of course edit all these. Copy this value, easy enough to paste the new prism target value, the prism target height value in, and now all your changes are going to be bold until you save them. It's obviously going to change a number of figures. It obviously will not change. We'll just close the observation editor here. And we do need to remember that our network has now changed. Don't have to do all these things at once, but it needs an update. And since we probably affected multiple figures at once, so we want to make sure that our figures need to be updated, need to go to survey points, and process the line work again. So again, editing the figures, do not get too involved in editing the figures and the points until you solve major problems that occur like that. Let's update the figures. Now we reprocess the line work. Up for our lip query, let's remove all that stuff from the drawing, put it back into the drawing so we get good figures to edit. Now that things have changed, keeping your updates straight. We have some basic order problems going on at this location, so let's review the figure editor, which changed in 11 is pretty much the same as 12. It is more stable. You do have more tools that you can employ to see what's going on with your figures and edit them that work in a more stable fashion. Once again, you can browse to the survey data from this toolbar. This very much like the point toolbar. The key issue is in survey, if you want to get at the data, the keyword is survey precedes everything. So we want the survey figure properties, not the figure property themselves. And since we have auto zoom on, we'll zoom to the entire length of the figure. Zooming around to locations in the figure. The way I prefer to do it is sort of find your location where we're about, and I'm going to move this box up, and you can grab a few locations, a group of locations. Probably didn't need to go that far. Oops. Grab from here to here. Want those locations, and then zoom to the selection, and that will take your screen, put it closer to the values that you need to look at. And now we'll look at those values, and when you click on a point, you go to the location. There's the point. Says the curve, it's the beginning of a curve, that's correct. Then it goes to 16, which is out there, and then it comes back to 22. So actually 22, the points were done by incoming point order, obviously not by the point numbers themselves. As we can see, 18 is before 16. So 18 was here, 16 was shot before it, and certainly 22 was shot after 18. So order can be adjusted easily enough, so you could simply move 22 in front. That pretty much straightens out all the wonkiness in our figure. In the figure editor, you need to make sure you hit apply. That will apply all your changes to the database. Say OK, and we made that simple figure edit. Here's another one that's got some issues. So once again, you can simply grab the figure on the screen, hit figure editing, find the right location. It will be down near the end here. So let's grab that selection of points and zoom to that selection. That will get us relatively close to where we want to go. And so we have the end, a change in curve at that location. We point here, and then you'll see we have we have 2 points at the same location. If we look at their NEZs, they hardly differ at all, but their elevations, this 4072 point, we'll also notice its elevation is considerably different. So we probably need to do some investigation about why its elevation is 6 feet off. So it is probably miscoded. We're going to, or at this point in time, remove it from our figure. Since we're focused on the figure edit, probably need to write down, scribble down that 4072. We need to figure out what the heck was shot there. It's something, but it's probably not the lip, or the target was improperly changed at that point. But we can simply eliminate it from the figure by deleting it for now. That changes the whole figure. Need to apply our changes. And let's take a look. And again, go back down here. And as we come into the curve, there's a change. Do I really need that curve break value right there? Probably not. Probably looks more like that. Based on the top of curve and the flow line, we might have to revise that later. But again, just simply by changing how the geometry is interpreted, we can change things. We could also edit the point itself just to remove the end curve, begin curve in the point data. That would change how the figure was processed. We'll leave that change for now. Say OK. So those are, basic figure editing. Roughly can pan around and see if you got anything else nasty in the lips. Doesn't appear so. Nice thing about queries is I can, having made the changes, I can simply remove that data from the drawing. Made another one for the flow lines. Pour all that stuff in the drawing. So you can go through the process of sort of divide and conquer. We know what that's going to have pretty much the same error, which was the order of how the points were shot at the location. So we pretty much got that one. So it's really just a question of finding the point order up here and getting it straightened out. And let's zoom to the selection again and find our location. So there's 16, there's 19, we go to 17, we're going back to 23. 23 needs to move forward. That cleans up that entire figure. A couple of seconds. Easy enough, so our flow lines line up. Got another figure here where we got 3 shots. Probably a 4 shot going on here in this figure. Let's grab that figure, edit its geometry. It does start down at the bottom, so we can probably want to grab that area and zoom to that selection. It does show you what you select, so you got a pretty good idea where you're going. We're beginning curve here, and let's zoom to this smaller selection. Let's pick up one more point and zoom to that selection. Get us a little more focused on what our issue is. We got 52, going to 55, come back to 58, back to 59, and then to 85. Looks to me like 58's got to go uphill, 59's got to go uphill, and 59's got to go one more uphill. So now the points are in the right order and our flow line looks pretty good. Works for me. Easy enough. Save your changes. Once you've saved your changes, you've saved them in the database. Down here we have, in the same figure we're editing, we have another issue of how the curves are being interpreted here. So we probably got a tangent issue we need to work out in terms of how these flow lines are broken. So again, go back to figure editing. Now I want to go to the end of the figure. It does help if we pick on the icon and go to here. And since it's been to zoom to selection, we'll get that closer. So we got 67, 73, 79 is immediately afterwards. Let's take a look how those resolve. Again, 4072 had a blown shot. Something was strange with that one, so let's remove this. Simply remove that from the figure, reapply, up, down, and get where I was working at the end here. Again, probably don't need curve break. That'll fix my flow line. Probably have the exact same issue in the top of curve as well. Now that I've identified and found them, easy enough to remember to fix them. Let's check our figure where we made those changes in a different way. And one of the nice things that works a lot better in 13 and 14 is edit elevation and take a look at the elevation editor. I'm going to expand this since we really care more about the spreadsheet than anything else. And we're looking for radical changes in grade. So we can simply look down, peruse, and if we see, well, there's a 3% one, that's 3% grade break, but it's not all that much of a change in elevation. So what we're looking for are radical changes in elevation. Notice we also end up with other figures that will cross, and that's what these mean, that there are other figures, other geometries actually crossing at these locations. So I do have some crossing break lines for one reason or another at locations. And if you pick, you can kind of pick, Civil 3D will show you what node you're on or what you're picking at. Once again, edit elevations will help you find major problems in the figure simply by going to the elevation editor and checking it out. We'll close the elevation editor. The horizontal tab, these two tools turn the whole tab on. So notice that gives you the whole elevations tab. There are some nice little fix-it tools in here that occasionally come in useful. under edit elevations. But for the sake of time, we'll skip them, but you should review what they do. We'll turn off elevations. And in horizontal geometry, which is this tab, we turn it on. Probably the most useful thing here is that you can reverse the figure from this location, and this actually does reverse the figure. Inside the figure editor, there's also a reverse tool, so it works from here, but that requires you go in and open and edit it. Other thing you have to be careful of in figures, and you'll see this as we go in, if you get a really long figure, there may be places where it's really hard to see. Sometimes it's a good idea to select a section of the figure. Let's do from here, pan down about there, and zoom to that selection. And all arrows look pretty good. And that will pan you to the location or to any vertex that you have selected, which is sort of like zoom, but not quite the same. Notice it'll assume you have let's see if pan works. So if we have a few selected, you pan to, so that actually helps. Grab a few more, and you'll notice it will put you on the shortest one that you found. Want to point out that having reviewed this, we have 43 here. 46 is a little bit away, so let's zoom to those real close together. You can also apply zoom in drawing. It does require points, so you can zoom out and you'll see that we actually have a notch in the flow line at that location. So you can use zoom in window, take a look, okay, so 43 is there, 46 is there. That makes sense. That looks okay. Let's go from our 50 location. Grab another few points here. And if you change it, you got to remember you do got to go back and pick out of the menu, so I tend to pick out of the menu. You'll see up in here we also got something going on. So looks like there's 11, 06, 18. So you got an order problem, so you want where there are arrows that go back and forth. Let's pick from here to here, those points. Again, zoom to that selection. There's the first point. 18 is there. 19 is there. 05 is here. 99 is here. So it looks like we got shots coming from two different setup points that are in the wrong order. This is sort of a repeat of the same location, so we go forward and backward through there. So we're just going to remove those. Our other choice would be sort them out in progressive order and move them around in order. And we'll apply that change. Simply remove them from the figure for now. And again, that's a common issue that you have to watch out for in the figures. It's kind of not easy to see unless you use the figure editor and zoom to locations and kind of go through it systematically. It may or may not cause you issues in your surface, but it certainly would might cause you documentation problems, and it might indeed cause you figure problems as well. Biggest upgrades in 13 in terms of figure editing, things work a lot the same, but we have the value, the added value of being able to deploy queries to focus down on our selection sets of data and look at the data, point data, figures at the same time, getting in and out of drawings, and that's one of the bigger benefits. Things have gotten a lot more stable in terms of editing the figures that you pick and edit inside the figure editor in 13 and 14. So as we saw, we have new ways to preview things. The biggest one would be the query-based drawing preview. Got to remember that to edit the property of something that's survey data, look for that survey keyword. So it's survey point properties and survey figure properties, all the ribbons in the toolbars. The ribbon tools are better organized. The edit horizontal and vertical tools bring up entire new panels that you can turn on and off, and the edit vertical actually gives you a good way to look for breaks and help ID breaks inside Civil 3D. If you create a manual figure or convert a 3D polyline to make it into a named figure, the process simply lets you make it, and it will put it in the database and put it back in your drawing. So be aware that you no longer have to create it in the survey database and then insert it back into the drawing. They remove that, whether that's good news or bad news, sort of up to you. It's just a change in behavior. Now that we've imported and exported in and out of our drawing with figures a few times, we're just going to hop back into Civil 3D and make it clear we have a surface in the drawing. So if I use Control A and select everything in my drawing, get multiples of things, you'll see we have a surface and we have a whole bunch of parcel segments. If I select everything or delete everything, which will simply delete my reference, and Control A again, I will still end up with my parcel segments, which are actually marked for delete, but I cannot actually remove them from my drawing. So to remind you, simple thing is while you're working on a QA drawing, simply close that guy every once in a while. Don't save any changes in it. Go back and immediately reopen it so that you keep a clean drawing without a lot of extraneous parcel segments.